Well, the Dragons jumped 5 places on the table in 2024 and looked a chance for an unlikely final spot. They ultimately fell short, but can we call this a successful campaign for Shane Flanagan's men? Let's find out. This is the 2024 season review for the Dragons. And here to break this down for me, as always, Zero Tackle expert analyst Darren Parkin. Darren, 5 wins to 11. Pretty good improvement on last year.
Absolutely. They were equal favourites to win the Wooden Spoon at the start of the season, and I think that's where most people would have had them, bottom 2, bottom 4. So they probably improved about 1.5 points a game offensively and defensively. So a big step in the right direction. Some of the numbers could be a touch deceiving, but they would have been thrilled with the progress they made for sure.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's take a look at the 2024 pass mark. So coming into 2024, the Dragons fans were probably looking at a wooden spoon, or they just wanted to see some improvement, basically. So how do we rate their 2024? Did they pass the mark, or...?
Yeah, definitely. I think 2023 was an absolute horror show. So they would have come into this season wanting some stability and some progress, and they certainly got both of those things. I mean, the stability one, there were some wobbles sort of later in the year that are continuing now with some off-field murmurings around players, but they couldn't have asked for much more in terms of what they got on-field. They actually looked a decent chance for a fairy tale finals appearance, which would have been remarkable. Just late in the season, some of the rough edges from the year before started to pop up, and they coughed up that chance. But, they made a lot less errors, 70 or 88 less missed tackles. A little bit better offensively, not quite as much as they would have liked, but a little bit better there. Overall, they were harder to move the ball against. They made a few less mistakes, and they were slightly more creative when they went forward, which made them very dangerous. And yeah, you couldn't look at it as being anything else other than a pass for sure.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's take a look at what went wrong for the Dragons this year in the lowlights. All right, so starting off our lowlights is probably an obvious one. So Zac Lomax, who started all year, is now off to the Eels.
Yeah, that hurts. And you look at Ben Hunt as well with that ongoing speculation, which we'll touch on a little bit throughout the course of this as we go along. But it's conceivable that 2 of their most influential players both depart the club. And if you dig a bit closer into the ins and outs of their season, they were progressing pretty well after being second last. But they lost 5 of their last 7, and including their last 3, so that made it a bit of a frustrating finish to the season. Probably the low light on field was that the Roosters absolutely hammered them on Anzac Day, which was a bit of a throwback to some of what we saw the year before. And the other one, probably their best 2 players that we mentioned, Lomax and Hunt, were ranked first and second in the competition for errors with 93 between them. So there was a little bit of the taking the risks and biting off a bit more than they could chew in those situations. So, yeah, I'd say that the concerns for them would be what happens now with some of those positions.
Yep, absolutely. All right, moving over to the highlights. So a big highlight for the Dragons in 2024, that tremendous double around the Origin period where they ended up beating both eventual grand finalists.
Yeah, there's a theory in most sports that teams can be defined by what their best looks like, and the gap between their best and their worst was substantial, but closing that gap's probably easier than raising the bar of your best level. And they beat Penrith around about the Origin period. Now Penrith were under strength as a result of the amount of players they had in Origin, but then about 6 weeks later they beat the Melbourne Storm 18-16, and the Storm had most of their contingent available on that particular occasion. So those 2 wins, I think, at the start of the year they were promising, but a lot of people were thinking, well, are they genuine, or is this a side just spiking a little bit at the start of the year with some confidence? But those 2 wins, I think, made people think, yeah, you've got to be very careful with this Dragons side each time you go out there to play, because they're capable of beating anyone in the competition. And if they were to watch tapes in the off-season as fans or within the playing group, look at those ones and sort of build off that in terms of what you're trying to do.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, moving over to our most improved now, and it's probably a bit of a painful one. All right, Darren, so unfortunately, their most improved was Zac Lomax, who is out the door.
He is, and that's the cruel part about it on the back of that season, and they would have known that for a little while, but he was incredible. He got the flick from his usual centre role, but instead of letting that impact him, he probably became the best winger in the competition, or one of. Earned a call up into the New South Wales State of Origin side. He actually dominated on debut and played a really significant role in their victory. He led his team for total runs, total run metres. He scored 14 tries as well. So, yeah, he was sensational. They couldn't have asked for more. And the Eels, unfortunately, now can't ask for much more than that either. Second rower Jaden Sewer also deserves a mention for a pretty solid year too.
Yeah, absolutely. Two standouts there. Moving over to the headlines now. All right, so if there's one thing we know at Zero Tackle, it is headlines, and one that has been consistent in this year is Bent Hunt.
Yeah, and it continues to be the case. He's still contracted, but you'd be betting pretty long odds on him seeing that one through. It's the longer this goes on, you would think it's very likely that he will depart. There was a lot of chatter during the season about being allowed to speak to other clubs, and unfortunately for the Dragons, the speculation has become quite public. You have your exit interviews at the end of the season, and apparently some of those conversations were quite frank and quite direct, and you could probably label it now in the bad marriage category between not so much the Dragons and Hunt, but maybe Flanagan and Hunt and how that all comes together. So he'll be a big loss for them, even at his age, but it is looking increasingly likely that would be the case. And I guess when they're looking for off-field stability, this one wasn't a bad end, but obviously Ryan Webb stepping down wasn't earth-shattering. But given everything they went through in his tenure, that probably came up a bit again when he left the club. Yep,
absolutely. So, look, it hasn't been compared to some other teams. Not that bad. All right, looking ahead now to 2025 and the pass mark. All right, so if you're a Dragons fan coming into 2025, you've gained a bit of confidence from this year, but ultimately, I don't know if they're going to be making finals. So where would we give their pass mark for 2025?
Yeah, they've had a huge jump in wins, which they've got to make sure that they don't, I guess, get too ahead of themselves now as fans in terms of what the expectations are based on that. I think with some of the players leaving, some of the depth, that was a tremendous result. And if they can emulate that again, I think that's a pretty good performance. So they should aim to win between 9 and 12 games, finish in a similar spot on the table. So I think that would be a pleasing outcome, all things considered, for them. I mean, you never know. They're in the mix for finals a bit this year, but I'd consider that to be a little bit unlikely at this point.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, that wraps it up for our 2024 season review for the Dragons. Hopefully they can improve a bit more next year so that our chief editor, Scott Pride, Zero Tackle, is just in a better mood most days. He does find something to complain about most weeks, but hopefully next year it's not the Dragons. So thank you so much for breaking that down, Darren. What else do you reckon for any closing remarks to the Dragons?
Yeah, big tick on their year. So enjoy your off season, and there's a future there for sure.
Yep, absolutely. So let us know in the comments if you think the Dragons can keep moving forward. Remember to like and subscribe. We'll be doing season reviews for every team, working from the bottom of the ladder up, and we're also looking forward to 2026 and who your team should target. So remember to like, subscribe, and catch all the latest NRL news at zerotackle.com.